Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Gorgeous to see you all. It's amazing and beautiful. It makes me happy. A tiny bit of logistics here at the beginning. If we're not expecting this, we are not, I'm sure it's going to be grand. However, if the Zoom session does hiccup, if the internet hiccups, I believe you guys will just stay in the room, in the Zoom room, and if not, as soon as I get hooked back up onto the internet, which may take the resetting of something out there in the other room, I don't really understand any of it. The Zoom session will just open again. So if something weird happens like that, just give it a minute, be patient, rest in presence. I think it's going to be fine. We're working with it. Also, this is a new laptop. And so if I turn off if I turn on the do not disturb, which stops like dings from text messages and emails and all of that, somehow or another, it's like interfering with the internet signal, the do not disturb. And Tim and I haven't figured it out. So you may hear a ding or two. It doesn't mean anything. We don't have to do anything in response to it. It's not Pavlovian. We just let it be as it is. Go on by. I think that is the amount of logistics. I'm going to say this at the beginning too, because I don't know that I'll have the wherewithal at the end. All of this session will be posted on the private page on the website, along with an inquiry and a guided meditation, probably within the next couple of days after this session. For sure by Monday, probably tomorrow, because Tim and I will probably get excited and we'll just want to do it. But we'll see. I may have to turn on the air conditioning, which may account for a different sound quality, but I might have to do it. I think that might be the extent of that kind of housekeeping stuff. I want to say a little bit about the online retreat container and just being in Sangha in general. And this came forward in retreat, the retreat that we just finished in Cove. There's a piece of the mind that lives in comparison. That's what it does. It compares. This is left, this is right. This is da 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 da. It's like a comparative thing. And that place that we've talked about before within beingness, that is somewhat kind of a foundational belief and concept of the separate me, which is unworthiness, can really be plugged in and tuned in very strongly to comparison. So if that flares up, oh, they shared something, oh, da 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 da, I'm always talking, other people are never talking. I mean, whatever it is, I get all kinds of feedback about these sessions as far as like too many people were talking, not enough people were talking. I didn't feel like I was secure enough in what I said compared to what other people said. And, on and on it goes. And I'm not laughing at any of us. I'm laughing because I get it. It's somewhat endearing. The comparative mind just has to compare. Just got to do it. It's going to have to compare. So, knowing that up front, we can sort of let go of it, see it for what it is, return it to a compassionate, loving understanding. I see you, sweetheart. I get that you need to compare, but we're all part of this container, which is what I really want to say. We're all part of the beautiful container, each individual thread. Some of us speaking, then some of us listening, which is same. You got to have both. They're the same movement. Giving, receiving, listening, speaking, same movement. We're weaving this together. The wholeness of it. So it doesn't really serve, although we don't need to reject the comparative mind. You know, we don't have to reject it. We can see it for what it is. All kinds of things can come up. Good grief. When we're self-inquiring in a group setting, a Sangha setting. That's just part of it. There's only us here. There is no them. It's us. We're in it together. Ani told me that the Tibetan translation for Sangha is togetherness, which I loved because that's the word I always use. Togetherness, togetherness, togetherness. Okay. I think that's the stuff at the beginning. I usually want to begin in some silent sitting together, but I'm going to go ahead and just launch right into the talk because of the way the internet has been. If I have my eyes closed and it blinks out, or, you know, I don't know. We're just going to roll with the technology today. So this is, I couldn't decide, obviously, on just one wonderful thing to call this inquiry, this online retreat. So I called it 3 different things: the way of love, inhabiting fundamental presence. I can't remember the third one right now. Living empty fullness. That's it. I want to start today, I want to begin with inhabiting fundamental presence. And I wanted to, since we've kind of had a theme of Thich Nhat Hanh, this Sangha, let's see. I don't have a printer here, so I have to do it off my phone. I wanted to read this of Thich Nhat Hanh's to begin. Life is wonderful, mysterious. There's so much to discover and be curious about. Allow yourself to be free to enjoy your time on earth. Helping the world, liberating people from their suffering is something we can do and is possible. But first of all, we have to help ourselves and set ourselves free. And this really, it ties in to fundamental presence. Because when we begin to become more interested in what experiences thoughts, what experiences beliefs, what experiences ideas. That's when things really start to change. Our interest, our attention, our curiosity is very often, very, very often, I would say, a lot of the time, fixated, absorbed in the thought train, the belief train, the idea train. The narration, the referencing. But when we begin, just even the yearning, we spoke about yearning a lot at retreat, the yearning to, discover, well, there must be more. There must be more than that. That constant, that is always describing, categorizing, naming, dividing. And when we begin to be interested in what actually experiences the division, what experiences the categorizing, what knows about attention, what moves attention, that's when things start to change. Because the present, the presence that is presently present, always, begins to permeate, infiltrate, and liberate. The beingness, the consciousness. When we become, when the fire is lit, right? As it must be for all of us here, otherwise, why would we be here? Fundamental presence. Call it, here's something else I wanted to say at the beginning. Words are words. They cannot describe fundamental, essential, ineffable is. But we do our best. Some of the words I use will not resonate. They won't resonate. Some of them might, oh man, it be intriguing or uncomfortable. Some of them might just land like, oh man, she's talking to me. Regardless, if there is a word that resonates more deeply and efficiently, really, usefully for you, other than presence, okay. What do you call that which is always present in the presence of all the changingness? Everything comes and everything vanishes. But something, regardless of whether we're 9 years old or 25 years old, 40 years old, 70 years old, whatever, something has never changed. It's never changed. It hasn't been changed or moved or manipulated or manufactured or created or improved. It just simply is. The mind doesn't necessarily, and I'm not speaking of awakened mind, I'm talking about what some people have called monkey mind, or I sometimes use the word attention rather than mind. The narrator doesn't really want much to do with something that never moves. You know? It's just not what it's signed up for at all. So it feels funky and uncomfortable when the attention begins to be absorbed back into presence. And the narration will kick up all kinds of things, right? Ooh, get back, come back, dangerous edge, mystic edge ahead, mystic edge ahead. It will just kick up anything. Too simple. You don't have it. Look at that other person. They've got it. Whatever. I don't know. We'll each have our own flavor of whatever it's going to kick up. Back in the Dark Ages, when I was a scribe for a king, my head was taking, whatever it is, it's going to kick up something because there's nothing going on in an awakened mind. It's empty. It's empty. An interesting thing happened at retreat. A really interesting thing. Here, it was interesting here. Somebody was, one of our Sangha was bringing up a question about, whose thoughts are they and where do they come from and what happens if we don't have them and what's the mind going to do? I don't remember the exact question. It was a great inquiry. It was fabulous. And here, I just haven't seated the attention directly in the intellect and the narrating mind in a really long time. And I thought, well, okay, what is there? And I just seated the attention there, and the mind was dumbfounded, awestruck, stood still. There was no way to conceptualize or believe. That was what the question was about. Belief and believing. Is there really any true belief? I cannot believe any of this. I can't conceptualize any of this. Nothing that I say could ever be conceptualized or believed in this setting. The mind is dumbfounded and awestruck by all of it. The mind can't thread the needle. It's left at the gate. But it doesn't think it ought to be. And so it'll do anything to describe it and claim it and own it as if anyone could own fundamental presence or even have it. No one has it. It is. It is. Fundamental presence is. If it's not, then there's nothing. I like the word presence because some of the other words used to describe what I'm attempting to speak about, and which many of you are intimately familiar with, are just too austere, dry, and transcendent. And presence, at least here, resonates in a very immanent way. It's beyond all experience, but it is the exquisite warmness and aliveness that is seeing this beauty, sensing this gathering, so the attention, right, will, when it gets close to that absorption point, will often kind of just dip below the level of consciousness into that real dreamy, some of us may be familiar with that with like meditation. It can just sort of dip into dreamy world, or start, kicking up really a lot of thought train that's very seductive, whatever that is for each person. Each person's idea of gimme, gimme, gimme is different. But eventually, the attention becomes absorbed into presence, and then the felt sense of the center of experience, what we might call a me, the felt center of experience, radically shifts. It radically shifts. And one becomes conscious of the presence, and possibly as the presence. And it can feel like you're walking in two worlds depending on where identity currently is. And the key is just to be sincere about where the identification is. It's not a good or bad or worse or better, or there's no time limit on self-discovery. That's a really big myth. So we might be identified as a me, or as an I am, that shift, or as just I, possibly as is. It doesn't particularly matter, other than the sincerity and the well, let's just say the sincerity, the authenticity. Because no matter how we are identified, or whether the center is a me or an empty center or the fullness of God. Presence is, regardless. It's not rewarded. You know, we don't get rewarded. It's not deserved. It is. It is. And that relaxation, that understanding, even if it begins intellectually, great, is just a solvent. I mean, to use a phrase, greases the wheels of the awakening process. One of the, something that was said at retreat, Trish kept a beautiful, I don't know, diary, I guess you might say, of things that really stood out for her. And one of the things she read at closing satsang was, compassion is the solvent. And that's the truth. The Kenpo at the, not the Zen Center, Vajra Vidya, not this past retreat, but the year before, I asked him about power. And his answer was awakened mind, meaning empty of identification, plus compassion is power. That has really unfolded in this consciousness over the last couple of years. So we can be going through whatever we're going through in our life. And it could be a lot because the attention is more or less absorbed by the display of division or the presence that is. But we have the opportunity in every moment to return the attention to our current deepest sense of ourself. Even for a split second. In a compassionate, gentle, not get back to it, you're off course sort of way. That unfortunately, unfortunately, whatever, doesn't work. It doesn't work. What we resist persists. It just does. It's kind of a law. It's a law. What we resist persists. There's a lot of, and we're going to focus on this a little bit in this class, as far as the guided meditations, especially, and the next time we meet, the actual because the embodiment of all of this, inhabiting fundamental presence, the inhabiting of it, facilitates, necessitates a rewiring of the physiology, which can be super intense. I know some of you know what I'm talking about, are intimately, maybe even experiencing that now. So there's no use denying all of that, right? That's how it goes. I mean, that's how it goes. Old house, new wiring. The new I, like the letter I, the new I is the new earth. It can be, some of the stuff that moves forward here in consciousness sounds very, from a certain point of view, religious almost, which I wasn't born and raised in any kind of religion. I don't even really know it, but it will come forward sometimes. Being in the world, but not of the world. What could that possibly mean? But when that dawns in a real way, a direct way, navigational systems, sensory systems, the felt sense of I, the way one sees, the way one knows, all of it changes. It changes. You know, Sharon Landreth said to me, I just have never understood how people think that they're going to wake up and nothing's going to change in their life and with their body. She's so, she's just great when it comes to that because she's kind of seen it all. I have surprised her with a few things, but things will change. Intimate things, like how you see, feel, identify. The nervous system has to have an upgrade to handle the high altitude. And I don't mean that in any kind of hierarchical, better, worse, anything like that. I just mean that awakened consciousness is taking the elevator up and back down and in. And when it comes back down and in, rewiring, reintegration, adjustment. Good news is that a huge portion of it is sort of puked out, sometimes literally. Coughed out, puked out, seizured out, whatever it takes, in kind of a just rip the band-aid off sort of way. And then it continues, obviously, as we unfold to become more and more permeated and reflective of illuminated consciousness. It seems like a simple thing, doesn't it? To just, oh, okay, just relax into presence. And it is. It's more simple than the mind could ever, ever, ever orchestrate. But it's so profound. Life-changing. And so one begins to more and more and more and more and more see through the eyes of what one has realized. See through the eyes of love as the mind is given back, returned, returned, returned to love, returned to the heart. And there's less compulsion, right? I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but that's good. We all need to talk to each other about all of this. The compulsion to beat up on oneself and keep oneself divided out of the whole. It just isn't an option anymore. And we are amazed, are we not, by the ways that we do that, even after big realizations, right? Falling away of self, an empty center, all the stuff. Identifications, withholdings, come up into consciousness. Conditioning arises, and the space is there for it. It arises because the compassionate, empty vision, you might say, is there consciously. And so, guess what? My turn, my turn, my turn. To be seen, to be loved, to be compassionately understood. And that too can become a identification. I'm working on that conditioning for 35 years. I've been to, maybe it's going to take that long, but however long it takes, one has to be authentic and sincere about, am I identified with this process or what? Has this now become my thing? Me? My cross to bear? Or can I acknowledge, realize, and attend to the presence that it is seeing this, the space that is an presence of spaciousness, allowing for this conditioning to come up. When one resides, inhabits the loving present moment, the conditioning is free to go, liberated. This is the meaning of liberation. Liberated, not just for oneself, for all being. For all being. When one isn't bearing it, doing it, this is the key to, like what Thich Nhat Hanh was saying in the beginning. This is lest we forget, social justice reformer, telling us to liberate here in ourselves. First, become empty. First, become empty. Otherwise, the doer, all the identifications, what would they be? Fixer, all the stuff is still imbued and has the flavor of a very personal contraction, and it can't take it. It can't take the weight of the world. Good Lord. This is the instruction of the great masters. Become empty. So that the instrument is then filled as fundamental, loving presence. The empty center is filled. For a while, it feels real empty. Depending on who you are, that particular phase can be, what were we calling it at retreat? Deep pruning. Pruning. That particular phase can be emptying out. And even just once the core has emptied and there is like nowhere to go, that's what the feeling was here during that phase, was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, no defenses, no strategies, no no, just here, presently, empty. Life moves on. Love moves on. It continues to unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold in infinite capacity. But if we're doing it as a good person, a noble person, whatever we're doing it as, we're identified in a very contracted position of personal will and personal me and personal centeredness. It's suffering. It's deep suffering. And the world continues to look very, 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 very divided, and must look that way because that's what's believed. And God isn't some white-haired dude in the sky rewarding and punishing. God is the law of fulfillment. If we see war, then the display reflects war. There's no other way. Division, opposition. I don't know what the right word is. What's the Hafiz poem that we read? Place all your bets with dancing. Place all your bets with dancing and singing. I'm placing all my bets on wholeness, on love. Uncaused peace, uncaused love, original, but as in origin, as in the origin, as in If the sun is shining, the rays are fundamentally sunshine and shining as well, regardless of what they're believing, what the mindset is overlaying. One is what one is, what one is, what one is. And when we, as this, let's put it that way, it's better, as this comes into consciousness, then love is fulfilled in the display. Not because we did a really good job, but because that's how it is. That's how it is. People ask a lot, but how do we come to it, do it? Like I said, many of you are very aware of all of this and are, have directly experienced and realized fundamental presence. How do we begin to inhabit that? And it truly is a decision to give the attention, give one's self, surrender to one's fundamental nature, because we are very, very devoted. Maybe not so much on this, in this group, in this song, on this phone call, but there's no us and them. So I use the word we. We are devoted to giving the attention to the division, seeing the division. And boy, isn't reality trying to turn that volume up so that maybe we'll get the message? It's hard to come around to. I fully understand. It's hard to come around to the actuality that the mind forms, source creates. And when we begin to inform as an instrument of source, as source, not as an ego pretending they're source, but as source, the instrumentation of source, matter, the material world, the temporal existence, will be a reflection of timelessness. I'm going to read something here at the end and we're going to take a break. Let's see. Oh no, I've got so many devices going here. Ah. Love it, man. I don't know how many people know Thomas Merton, Trappist monk and mystic, social reformer, social justice was his gig, much like Thich Nhat Hanh. And I love this quote. I love it. He's talking about threading the needle, surrendering the idea of good and bad and all of the division, just surrendering it. And then it was as if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of our hearts, the depths of our hearts where neither sin nor desire nor self-knowledge can reach, the core of our reality, the person that each one is in God. If only we could see ourselves as we really are, if only we could see each other that way all the time, there would be no more war. Do we get that? We can't fight war with more division. There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, and no more greed. I suppose the biggest problem would be that we would fall down dumbstruck and worship each other. Amen. Thank you so much for coming today.